Well, Shabbat Shalom and welcome. This is Valley Best Shalom Torah study for a Shabbos morning. And I am joined this morning by one of my favorite rabbis and teachers on this planet, Rabbi Noah Kushner, who leads a community in San Francisco with the unlikely name of The Kitchen. And she will tell you, as she has told so many, that the reason The Kitchen and not Beth something or other is because when you walk into a house, that's the place we gather. It's a place of warmth and nurturance. And having spent some lovely Shabbases in that community, I will testify if you ever find yourself in San Francisco on a Saturday, please find your way to The Kitchen and pray and learn with this marvelous community. Noah, Shabbat Shalom, welcome.
Shabbat Shalom. It's such an honor to be here with you. You're my teacher.
Ah,
And we love it when you're able to join us and ask anyone who's with us today to come, please come spend Shabbat at the kitchen. It's very sincere.
it really is. It's marvelous. It's the only New Age Sephardic minyan, uh,
We
brilliant
like to say
learning.
we like to say that we're traditional in terms of observance and ritual, and postmodern in terms of who shows up.
It's quite remarkable. So this morning, of course, in the Jewish world is a remarkable morning, the Shabbos, because the holidays have concluded. And this holiday season, especially for people in our line of work, has been agonizing. Because if you remember where we were 2 months ago at the beginning of Elul, when we began that last month of the year, the month of introspection and self examination, there was tremendous anguish, tremendous pain, tremendous division, tremendous anger, tremendous everything over Israel, over America, over the state of the world. And in the course of these holidays, with the arrival of at least the promise, the hope of a resolution of peace, the return of hostages, now, although they're delayed, the return of bodies, just the possibility that there's possibilities again. You know, the psalmist has this beautiful line, Hafachta mispedi lemecholi. You change my mourning into dancing. And there really is a sense of that in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. Certainly, you can see that. So, tell me about the kitchen community on this, the day after the holidays, the Shabbos after the Yontif.
I think like the rest of the world, we especially for by Simchat Torah, we had people who had just been crying, over, and I don't think we all realize how much we have been carrying. And of course, it goes on, and there's a lot of pain after a war. But I don't think we realize just the relief of being able to put a few things down. And the morning of Shmini Atzeret, not only do we pray for rain for the first time, which, it's in the prayer for Machai HaMeitim, it already is in the prayer for the reviving of everything that's been lost. So that already felt very holy. But we also stopped praying for the release of the captives.
Mm,
And those two things together, I feel like sum up where we are in our world. We don't have to pray for the release of the captives. I mean, the body's notwithstanding. That was significant. That was a big piece of our tefillah for years now.
yeah. And the community begins to heal. You can see it already. There's sort of a reconciliation. I've seen families start talking to each other again. And let's hope for that. Um, you're in San Francisco. In San Francisco, of course, it's the westernmost. I guess Hawaii would be more west, but it's sort of the westernmost community, and in culture, not just in geography. So how does that feel? With all of this anguish and all of the hope and all of the dream and all of the mixed feelings, the division among us.
Yeah. I think being Jewish went from a nice to have to a have to have.
Mm,
And it turned out that walking into a room for a real Shabbat, and we're not a hugely political community. We just try to have as broad a tent as possible in San Francisco,
hmm
with all that means. And but still, walking into a Shabbat, a religious observance, a Jewish, unabashedly, unapologetic Jewish observance, ended up feeling like something someone would take a deep breath to do, and then once they came in, an exhale of like, oh, here I am. Here's hundreds of people praying on Shabbat.
mm.
It changed everything we did, the backdrop of the world.
Where do you hold high holiday services?
Well, please God, we're about to go towards a very long-term rental in a multi-floor building, but we're in the mission. We generally, though, for the past 15 years since we've been around, we've rented for Shabbat. We're at a school, a beautiful Quaker school that used to be the Levi's factory. And for high holidays, we rent a big loft, a giant loft in Soma.
Mm, that's wonderful.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there was a great deal of spirit because the music of your community is remarkable.
Our Chazan, Asher Shasho Levi, is Yotze Min HaKlal. He's unbelievable. And so we're one of the few communities that really integrates music and melodies and tefillah from Syria and Morocco and Iraq, along with Ashkenazi favorites.
Right. So if anyone loves oud, if you're in the mood for oud, this is the place you want to be on a Shabbat and in Yontif. It's a marvelous place.
The music is unreal. It's
So
unreal.
a couple of days ago, we finished the reading of Torah with Simchas Torah and rolled it back to the beginning and start all over again with Breshit. So this Shabbat, we have the joy of beginning again, which I think is a marvelous symbol for what the Jewish tradition offers us year to year, day to day, and moment to moment. This beginning again. And of course, the wonderful thing is the first word in the Torah is like beginning. So let's begin again. So this is the Torah portion. Remember that Rashi, the great commentator, once asked, like, why do we start here? Why don't we start with all the commandments and laws and imperatives of Exodus? Why do we start with all these stories in Genesis? And what he meant to say is because this is the Torah portion that sets the parameters of the Jewish narrative. This tells us who we are, what the world is like. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be to live in the world, to work in the world, to struggle with the world? That's what this beginning of the story. So as you read Breshit, as you read Genesis, what stands out? What jumps? Because this is one of those Torah portions we really ought to spend a month on, not just a week.
At least. You know, it's funny, as you're speaking, I'm reminded that the Kotzker says that Bereshit bara Elohim, God created the world and everything else God left to us.
Hmm.
Literally, the take of that first line is just all God did was begin the world and everything else is in our hands,
Hmm.
which feels very weighty. And it reminds me of this opinion of Radak, who says that when Adam and Eve are expelled from the garden and God puts these angels with the fiery swords to protect the garden, in truth, those angels with the fiery swords were just figments of the imagination. They were just wind. And the minute Adam and Eve were ready to make tshuva, they were ready to turn and acknowledge that they had distanced themselves from God and in lying and hiding. Those angels with the fiery swords disappeared. Adam and Eve could return to the garden. And Radak even says once they returned to the garden, of course, it's not the same, but you know what they did, he says? They took some of the soil from the garden. He really says this, I'm not making it up. They took soil from the garden and they went out and planted it in the world.
Hmm.
I
So,
mean, first of all, talk about your heirloom tomatoes.
love that. So go play with that a minute. So help for those of us who are so literal minded. First of all, Radak is Rev David Kimchi of the Middle Ages, Jewish
Sorry.
scholar
Yeah.
of the Middle Ages. No, it's fine. But play that out. So what does that mean? That the angels are a figment that what bars us from paradise is our own psychology, and that when we're ready, when we're qualified, when we're prepared, we can actually go back there. But they didn't go back. Instead, they took the fertile soil of that garden and brought it into the world. Go ahead, play with this for me. So that means what?
So tshuva allows you to return to that innocent state, the state of being vulnerable and accepting and loving. And perhaps you don't return to being an innocent, a child, but there are pieces of that that are necessary for the integrated psyche. And by planting it, by taking some of those pieces and planting it into your adult life, you can become integrated and whole.
Hmm.
And I love the idea that the garden remains open anytime you're willing to consider who you are and how you need to grow and what you need to fix. the garden is always open, you return, you take something of it again, and then you go back out into the world.
Hmm. That's beautiful. So I'll read it the other way.
Yeah,
In the garden, everything is provided you,
yeah.
which is innocence, yes, but it's also infantilizing. And they didn't want to go back to that state because they had tasted agency. They had tasted what it means to have power to shape yourself and to shape your world. They didn't want to go back to the infantilized condition of being a child, but they wanted some of the fertility of that, some of the imagination, the playfulness, the generosity of that condition in our world. And so they take it. And what's interesting, they don't take the fruit; they take the soil. I want to grow my own. I want to grow my own fruit. I want to grow my own personality. I want to grow my own world. I just need a little bit of God's help.
And remember, Adam, Adama, the soil this is not just any soil, it's what made the people.
And
It's literally the
you gotta
DNA.
open this up for all of us. So the word for earth in the Bible is Adama, and the word for the human being is Adam. We are earth folks. We are earth people, right? We do the same thing, by the way, in English. Human and humus comes from the same, not humus, but humus comes from the same thing. I know people who are made of humus, but that's a different lecture. That's a beautiful statement. That's a beautiful statement. So what else in Genesis? What else in this marvelous story, this marvelous magical story of creation just grabs you?
Well, just even, connecting to what we were just saying, I think that there's probably some kind of a back and forth or a dance between Garden of Eden and the rest of the world. I'm thinking of our teacher, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg and Soloveitchik, who talk about Shabbat and the rest of the week.
Hmm.
And so perhaps at the kitchen, we begin every tefillah on Shabbat by just saying, we're going back to the garden.
Yeah, Me'ein Olam Haba. The Talmud says Shabbos is a taste of the world to come, and the world to come is identified with the garden. So what happens is on Friday afternoon, if you do it right, if your house is cleaned up and your dinner's cooked and there's challah on the table, those fiery angels that protect they disappear, and we go back and we spend a day in the garden. We sort of frolic, you know.
Well, and I think about the necessity of that.
Mm,
That work is so seductive, and the idea of having that agency is so powerful that we can get really lost in that. And again, I'm up in Silicon Valley where tech is king, and there's no limit to the amount of platforms and ways you can be working, and it's insidious. And so the idea that you would turn your back on that and go towards a purposefully innocent state to become who you need to be for the rest of the week. I think it's there's a reason it's in the Ten Commandments, Shabbat.
mm. So it's actually not just an innocent state, but it's a disconnected state, disconnected from tech, disconnected from my social feed and my phone, and I have to actually turn to my wife and talk to her, right? And turn to my children and listen to them, and turn to my friends and hear them, and then come to shul and turn to the Torah and listen to it. And
And of course I'm me, so I'll say, you're going to talk to God. You're going to use. I was just noting how in the tefillot, in the prayers, on a holiday or on Shabbat, we say Kile Olam Chasdo, your loving kindness is forever. I
Mm,
think we must say it 100 times in one tefillah.
right, right.
And I think the purpose of tefillah, the purpose of prayer, is basically to remind you of all the things you forget. So it's not necessarily for God doesn't need to hear your loving kindnesses. We need to remember that. So we just keep saying it over and over and over again till you remember, oh yeah, it's possible for me to say that I'm holy. Oh, it's possible for me to say holy things. Oh, I have holiness in me. Oh. That's what it means to be, I think, in the garden, in the place of Breshid, and that's what we're trying to get to in every way in prayer and certainly on Shabbat.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and I don't mean to surprise you with anything, but
Surprise.
One of the things about the opening stories of Genesis that I find remarkable. So we have the magisterial creation story in chapter 1. It's actually the P document, but and then we have a folksy story in chapter 2. God creates the man from the earth, puts him in the garden, gives him all the trees of the garden. And then at the end of chapter 2, we have the story shifts, and God says, "Lo tov heyot adam livado." It isn't right that the human being walk the world alone. I'll create a companion for him. So tell me what you think of this. After creating the human being, the very next narrative is about love. Is about companionship, connection, and loneliness. Its opposite, isolation, disconnection. Of all the things, of all of the topics, I mean, it doesn't start out by saying, here's how you worship God. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say here's how you build a world. It doesn't say, thank God, here's how you make war, which you can imagine other civilizations would have introduced in the very beginning of their scripture, their foundational scriptures. It doesn't say, here's how you make a living. It starts out by saying, hey, you better be loving somebody or you're not going to be fully human. What do you make of that? It's just, to me, it's a wonderful observation about who we are as a people.
Yeah, I would go further. I would say you can't be holy if you can't love. So Rabbi Akiva says Shir Shirim is the Holy of Holies.
The
The
Song of
whole
Songs.
the whole Torah is built on love poetry. What in other, I have students who are early to Jewish life who pick up Shir Shirim, Song of Songs, and they're like, did I look at the right book? Because it is beautiful, evocative, passionate love poetry. And at first blush, you might look at it and say, this has nothing to do with God. This has nothing to do with religion. No, says Akiva, it begins there. That is literally the foundation. And if you understand about love, and I would also say yearning, and I would also say anguish, and I would also say, that connection, the deepest, most heartfelt connection, then you're ready to approach the idea of loving God and God's love for the world. One does not make sense without the other. Literally yesterday, I was just thinking it's a continuum. It's a continuum.
From
And
what to what? From
when you love a child, when you love a partner, when you love a friend, you love a student, you have then you have a sense maybe of a little piece of how God feels or how it feels to be connected to the Holy One who created us all.
I'm going to push you again because it's such a beautiful, what you said is so poetic. Feels, that's the word you use, right? When you open, for example, Maimonides, right, and you read Maimonides, the first chapter of Mishnah Torah, or the first section of Guide for the Perplexed, or even his 13 principles, Maimonides had no patience for emotions, for feeling. For Maimonides, it's all up in your head. It's all conceptual, higher philosophy, ontology, and metaphysics. And yet you're telling us that the Bible begins with an endorsement of emotion.
But doesn't even the Rambam say you have to love God in one of the first beliefs?
Later, he gets that in
Mishnah Torah.
Hilchas Tshuva. He gets it in the
No, no, no. In the first, he has a series of early beliefs.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
just looked at this last year, and I was
yeah.
like, look at this. I
But for
think he
him,
says you have to love God, even Rambam.
okay. But I want to push this idea of feelings. That religion is our religion is deeply invested in the heart, in
Yes,
feelings.
that's right.
It's not all about ideas, and it's not all about obligation, and it's not all about, I mean, the things that we all learn in Hebrew school. Well, I went to Hebrew school. The things we had to learn in Hebrew school, and like nowhere were feelings taken up.
No, in fact, I was just telling this story, and this is going to be in my book. It's called Pretend You Believe, and it's coming out next October.
Cool.
Um,
Send us a preview.
I will. But I was I was speaking with a young man on a panel, and he had had a lot of pain in his life. He was raised religious, but had left and was really struggling. And he was asking me in this impassioned way, "Is there a God? Because if there is a God, then I will keep doing all these things. But if there's not, then I'm gonna walk away finally, and I won't bother myself with all these things." And this is the short version of the story. But I just looked at him and I said, "I don't think you want to know if there is a God or not. I just think you want God to answer you." And
Mm,
that's one of the oldest questions. It's in the Psalms, it's all over Torah. Your heart is broken and you want God to answer you.
mm,
And I do think that when we move into the framing of you're saying emotion or feeling, for me, it's even more specific. It's a sense of yearning and vulnerability and generosity and a desire to love. We understand so much more about what religion is trying to do.
that's beautiful.
I would not reject the intellectual components, by the way.
No, 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 no. Listen,
It's not one or the other.
I got all these books behind me. I can't do that. So,
I got books. I
but
got books.
it's that I think that what you pointed to is something important, though. I think for many of us, in the training we received when we were young, in our introduction to things Jewish, there wasn't a sufficient or even any crumb of respect for the heart, for feelings.
Yeah.
It was all you got to do this, and then you got to do this, and then you got to do this. You got to do it this way, and if you don't, you're the only feeling was guilt. You know, you're a bad person. And what you're pointing to is a yearning, this need for something deeper from the heart, not just something intellectual.
No, I think even just going back to our story in Genesis, when the verse talks about when God is making clothes essentially for Adam and Eve when they are expelled and put out into the world, it says God is making clothes for them.
I love
And
that, by the way. It's such a Jewish mother's move, right? Get out of the house, but put on a sweater, you know?
and I just imagine God crying as God is making these clothes, and just saying, "I just want you to come back. I don't want to make you these clothes. I don't want to give
Mm.
you this armor. I just want you to come back."
I would read it the other way around. I would read it like, okay, you've decided to be a grown up.
Mm,
You've decided to create, like I created a universe, you will create yourself.
mm,
I just want to protect you. I mean,
mm.
the joke about get out of the house but put on a sweater, the Jewish mother's move with apologies, of course. Um, it really is. I think it's the other way. I think it's I want you to go do who you I want you to go find out who you are, but I want you to know that I'm always going to be here to protect you, So like my mother like moved me into my college dorm room and made sure that I was my stuff was folded in the drawers. You've just taken three kids off to school, right? Yeah, be safe. Just go and do it. I want you to have the adventure, but be safe.
I'm laughing because in next week's Torah in Lech Lecha and then in the next week's Parsha, there's or in a few weeks the Abraham is leaving. It's that big moment where he's leaving his father's house and he's leaving his parents and he's leaving his homeland, and it's this big moment, almost of rupture. Except that if you keep reading, you notice that his parents come with him anyway. I just imagine him making these big speeches about how he's leaving and he's going to be on his own and he's going to be his own person. But would you help with the babysitting? Actually,
Yeah,
my kids, I still need you.
all right, come with me.
I think what we're both saying is that separating is complicated
Hmm.
and it's not one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you leave, and I don't think this is only Jewish families, even, I think this is a universalist statement. When you leave, you take a piece of your parents with you, you take God with you. And when you send your kids off, you send a piece of yourself with them, please God. And it goes on.
Now I want to complicate the conversation for a minute because what happens in this Torah portion, we have the creation, the garden. Adam and Eve eat from the fruit. They're expelled from the garden. They begin a family. We have the first homicide, just kind of horrifying, fratricide, actually, which sort of sets a pattern for the rest of the book of Genesis. and God knows for the rest of human history. And then the end of the Torah portion is sad because what begins in such optimism and purity and idealism, God said, it is good, it is very good. By the end of the Torah portion, we have a God who's really disappointed, looks into this world that God, he's given us to human beings, and we've just messed it up. We've just mucked it up terribly. So talk to me about divine disappointment.
I think, but my first take is like, thank God we don't have just one parsha. And even note when at Simchat Torah, even when we end, we begin again.
Right.
So I think, just it's an easy out. My first easy out answer is you're not supposed to just read one parsha.
Mhm.
It would be a tragedy if all we had was one parsha. And in fact, it gets worse after that, as we know. It gets worse and worse and worse. And I won't be the first person to point out that the arc of Genesis ends with brothers who don't kill each other, which is the big victory.
Yeah. But it takes seven iterations of that to get to there.
And in this world that we have today, we can actually see how just not killing each other is a big victory
Yeah.
and serious, and how much we can learn just from that. That we could really be mad at each other and have horrible history with each other. Terrible things, threw each other into pits, sold each other into slavery, betrayed each other in every imaginable way. And yet we don't kill each other.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah.
there's this midrash that I've been thinking about how it talks about the verse from Hallel, the rejected stone becomes the cornerstone, essentially, Evan Maso. And the rabbis related to Jacob, who had all these sons, many of whom were quote unquote rejected stones. They were problematic. But in the most Jewish parenting move ever, he makes them all the cornerstone, says this midrash. There's 12 cornerstones,
Hmm.
right? They each become a head of a tribe. And you could take it further. The midrash also looks at Abraham and his children, Ishmael, right? Jacob, Isaac has Jacob and Esau. They have sons that they reject, right? But what if all the rejected children became cornerstones? Is it possible? I mean, it's obviously a utopian version, an aspirational idea. But I think what the Torah is suggesting, what the Midrash is suggesting, is the idea that even those things we thought, no, that is off the table, that has to be rejected. There's no way, that is not safe. That is, you know, maybe even those could be somehow integrated. And society maybe relies on us being able to have many, many kinds of cornerstones.
Hmm. There's an old story, and it actually happened to me once where I had a funeral service for an elderly guy who lived a wonderful long life. And I sat with his kids, and the oldest kid said, I I know all of you love Dad and cared for him so well, but you all know that I'm the oldest and I was the favored one. And the second kid said, No, that's not true because he and I had this special thing going and we shared this and share. I think I was the favorite. And the third one said, I'm the baby, guys. I got all of, and all three kids looked at each other and began to weep. That the father had done the job of teaching each of these kids that they're the favorite one. Don't tell your brothers, but you're the special one. Not every parent has that ability, God forbid, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
that idea that you can communicate the preciousness and the place, the belonging.
And I'm very compelled by this idea that maybe something that you thought, no, this has nothing for me. I'm afraid of this. I can't do it. It is indeed the thing that you could grow towards or integrate in some way.
Go ahead, expand on that. What does that mean? Your own internal Evan Masu Habanim, your own internal rejected stone.
Well, I meet a lot of people for whom they're like, I'm not religious. There's no, they say it almost like it's like the first thing out of their mouth. It's a confessional. I
Mm.
like you. You're fine. I'll come. I'll come to Hanukkah, but don't. I'm not religious, and I just say I think you're using religion as a word to mean the thing you don't want to do rather than what it does mean. And I think if we talked a little bit about belief or some of these things that you are resisting, you actually need it a great deal,
Mm.
and you want it.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful midrash.
Mm,
So let me spring one more on you, and I keep apologizing, but um, so this is Parshat Breshit. This is the section dealing with the beginnings, and we Jews have a particular affection for beginnings. After all, Rosh Hashanah is our high holiday, and we like to begin again over and over again. So what's going to be new for you this year? What beginning are you investing in this new year?
mm. It's probably finishing my book and putting on paper the conversations I've been having for 25 years, and that's a different stage of life for me.
Mm-hmm.
Less cavalier.
Yeah, I don't exactly think you've been cavalier, but I appreciate. How's it coming? Is it coming well?
It's hard, when you write I don't know if you know this, but when you write a sermon, you give it that day. Nobody
Mhm.
edits it. When you write a book, and you have written many beautiful books, a lot of people edit it. There's a lot of waiting and there's a lot of editing. So it's a new process for me, but I'm very honored by the process.
Good.
It's something quite remarkable to have people who are so smart and invested be reading your work. It's it's a zechut, it's a privilege for me. But I want to know what is new for you.
I have these three gorgeous grandchildren, who are now old enough to like really relate to. And I've discovered myself as a grandfather that I never imagined. I mean, people tell you this is going to be fun. It's way more than fun. It is like, first, it's a whole chance to do it right this time, and not mess it up. And it's just a discovery of renewing what the world looks like through the eyes of a 2-year-old, and what wonder really looks like, because
What's the latest, cutest story?
there's wonder in everything. There's just wonder in everything has wonder. A box of Cheerios becomes the greatest meal you ever ate in your life. And you know, it just to watch these kids grow and to share that with them is quite remarkable. And that's been my great joy. I mean, I've written books and I've given sermons and I've taught classes and I'll continue to do all that stuff. But I can't wait to go home and play with the kids. That's what I do. So, Noah Kushner, thank you for joining us for Torah study. Thank you to everyone who's been with us this morning. It's Parshat Breshit. Open the Torah and read the first few chapters and open your mind in the way that Rabbi Kushner has shown us to the deep, deep, deep truths that the Torah points to inside of us. And thank you for being part of Torah study. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to teach with you and to be able to speak with you. Thank
It's a
you.
joy. Take care.
Okay.